Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Charles Sabansi. I want to welcome you guys to another episode of the Dreamerspro Show, where we cover everything from sports, hot topics, classic debates, entertainment, and we give you guys a fresh perspective on things and how we see them. And today we have a pretty interesting show for you guys. But before we get into it, please make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel. Also, if you want to follow me on Instagram, my name is Charles Tabansi. My handle is CTABANZ. If you want to follow Dreamerspro, the channel, same name as the channel on Instagram. And also make sure you check out our podcast, the Dreamerspro Show. We have that pinned in the comment section below. Let me get into this topic here. So last night I was going through the internet and I came across a video that was suggested to me, funny enough, from Marcellus Wiley's channel. And he was talking about a range of different things, right? Then I saw a segment in which he was discussing Brandon Marshall's comments on ESPN Shannon Sharpe. And I'm like, what did Brandon Marshall have to say about Shannon Sharpe? So I immediately went on the internet to hunt down that video, and I came across a channel called Danza Project. Danza Project, that's the name of the channel. So I quickly went over there and I started to kind of look for what he had to say. Essentially, to give you guys the backdrop, the two gentlemen, the two hosts, were talking about an incident that they had on their show featuring Charleston White and Brittany Reiner, whatever her name is. Anyway, so they were talking about how that was a bit of a mess, right? As show. So they were talking about that, and then they said, you know, by the way, Shannon Sharpe had her on his show, right? And a lot of us scratched our heads when we saw that decision, but that's a whole different conversation. But anyway, so we thought that we were going to just start laughing about that, and then Brandon Marshall just comes out of nowhere and says, you know, Shannon Sharpe is whack. And they were like, wow, really? And then they asked him to kind of explain his position. So what we want to do is want to play exactly what Brandon Marshall had to say about Shannon Sharpe, and then we're going to come back and continue on with the show. Take a listen to what he had to say here.
Yeah, she did the Shannon Sharpe one.
Oh, after?
Yeah.
Yep.
That's when he asked her about how many bodies she had.
He's
and she
whack.
told him, and he said he's whack.
Look what Shannon's white.
That's former alumni.
And if he was former alumni, he wouldn't be talking about athletes the way he's talking about athletes. He talking like he was trained to be a ABC, NBC analyst.
Yeah.
It's like there's a responsibility that you have. Like, first off, I would say this amazing career, and to me, I think he's probably top 3 when it comes to personalities right now on television.
Yep.
He hit his stride. Definitely. When he started pulling out the Black and Milds and the Hennessy,
the memes and stuff
on FS1, he found it, right, and he became America's uncle. So shout out to him there. But what I don't vibe with is when you tear down your fellow, you know, athlete. There's a way to critique them. You know, it's like, and you clout chasing, you talking about Russell Wilson a year later on some other things. Like come on, bro.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like your platform's too big for you to go chase that. Yeah. And I just don't vibe with that. I
was watching the interview you did with Stephen A. Smith, and I like what he said about that, because obviously he catches all the flack for what he says and how he says it.
He's a wordsmith. He's go.
Yeah, but his point was, I say what I say, but I really talk like this. If you catch me acting different, he's like, this is how I talk. He said,
That's
can
true.
I have a job? He said, this is my personality. If you catch me putting this on, then you could be annoyed with me because I'm doing something. I'm not being somebody.
But here's the problem.
I mean?
Here's the problem. So Stephen A. Smith and like the Skip Bayless of the world changed the game from a broadcasting, covering sports standpoint. Journalism, you're not going out there critique, like talking about the person, the athlete, the person of the athlete. You're not going out there talking about the X's and O's because you don't know the X's and O's. Okay? So they went out there, boom, it turns into first take. And they start putting all this color in the game.
Yeah.
Right? And so they, you know, it's like they start talking about things that, and it's not, this is not about Stephen A., it's about the industry. So they start adding, more sauce to sports.
Well, too much color.
And so people's opinions, like you asked, like I got into it with somebody on my show, and they're like, this quarterback sucked. I'm like, why does quarterback suck? Because he threw this interception. I said, why did he throw the interception? And they couldn't tell me why he threw the interception. But body who know like football and that person's job would say like, actually that wasn't on the quarterback, it was on the receiver. The receiver actually ran the wrong route. So the quarterback dropped back, he took a 5-step drop, he looked the safety off, then threw it to the right. If he ran the right route, it would have been a touchdown instead of an interception. But what we see in media is that you suck, the quarterback threw the interception, but the reality is it's on the wide receiver. So you got guys out there creating these narratives that's just destroying careers or reputations.
I see.
And so, like, the reason why Shannon Sharpe caught a stray from me is because sometimes he's going out there just like just click.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? It's like
that's not
here's what I learned in that game, and that's why I had to get out of FS1 and like the whole linear side of things is because, and watch this. Stephen A. Smith, he hates the Cowboys, he loves the Steelers. He loves the Knicks, he hates this person. Right from a TV standpoint. And then you got Skip Bayless. You know who he like, you know who he don't like.
Yeah, them Cowboys.
Who loves Jordan, who loves LeBron, debate. Right. So basically they protect their takes. So it don't matter what happens in this game or what happens with this athlete.
It's gonna be something.
I gotta make sure my point is valid. So you go out there and you start making up shit. Damn. Like,
because you gotta keep it.
Skip Bayless, how can you say something bad about LeBron James? He gotta protect his take because what? That makes him relevant. That actually was that's one of his biggest things is LeBron James this, LeBron James that. Bruh. How can you go out there and talk that reckless about LeBron James? Now, you can say he had a bad game. You can say, you know what I'm saying, that was a bad mistake. He shouldn't have did this, made the decision that way. You can give your opinion there. But to say he's not good, to say he's not great, to say he's a terrible person, how? It makes him what?
A hater.
Well, that too.
So you heard what he had to say. This is going to be a very nuanced conversation, or at least it should be. In the world that we live in today, with every passing day, sports media is starting to have more checks and balances. What am I talking about? Traditionally, sports media was something that was conducted on television and in newspapers and maybe various other mediums. But generally, it was television and newspapers, right? So the people that said stuff about athletes on TV or said stuff about sports on TV or wrote about it online were the ones that were able to kind of decide the message. And there weren't really any checks and balances beyond an editor, maybe the head of a company, whatever it is, right? So these people had the freedom to say what they wanted without really any pushback. But with the advent of social media and other media platforms like YouTube, Facebook, and other various streaming platforms, it is now given athletes and other voices a medium to now go out there and express their views, but to also provide checks and balances to some of the things that are being said. In a way, they're kind of policing some of the things that are said. And it's not just athletes policing people, media members. It's also media members policing athletes now on their new platforms. You saw, I'll give you guys an example of this. You saw a spat that took place between Paul George and Stephen A. Smith a few months ago when, there were some things that were said on Paul George's show, and then Stephen A. Smith went on his show, and then they all met on Paul George's show, and they had their back and forth, right? These things never used to happen in the past. And what we're seeing is that now sports media is turning a lot of former athletes into mega stars. And you can see that with Shannon Sharpe. Shannon Sharpe now is more popular than he had ever been at any point in time, I would argue. And you see him on shows like ESPN, where on certain days they're bringing in 850,000 viewers, live viewers a day to watch their show. And because of that, he has a lot of influence. And when you have a lot of influence, you have to be careful with what it is you're saying, because there are people that are going to push back on you. Now, to Brandon Marshall's point about the way you conduct your business in terms of critiquing sports, I understand where he is coming from, because he's like, listen, it's one thing to critique what you're seeing, critique events, critique certain actions that certain players made. It's another thing when you critique the person. I understand that vantage point, but then there's another side to this. because sometimes a player's personality can dictate their behavior on the court or on the field. I'll give you guys an example of this. James Harden. James Harden has a reputation as a player, and he also has a reputation as a professional. And these two things are interlocked. You cannot evaluate James Harden solely on his performances on the court. You also have to evaluate him best based on his temperament, the things that he has done and his behaviors in the past. You have to factor all of those things in, where inevitably you're going to have to discuss the person's personality. And if you don't do that, it makes it seem as if you're trying to circumvent giving people the full picture. Give you guys another example of this. You remember when Ben Simmons went on the JJ Redick podcast. When he was up there, JJ Redick was asking him no questions of any serious magnitude whatsoever. He just let Ben Simmons kind of skate through. And a lot of people are like, hey, why didn't you ask the tough questions? Why didn't you question his work ethic? Why isn't he improving on his basketball game? All of these different things which go into a person's personality and their character. Because then we have to ask, okay, so what is it about you that's causing you not to improve as a player, right? So in certain instances like that, it is necessary for a journalist or an athlete to do that. Now, maybe Brandon is talking from the standpoint of, listen, you're a former athlete, so you need to have a certain type of decorum when you're talking about athletes in terms of protecting them. But I disagree with that notion. I think you should say what you see. I think you should try not to make it personal, and it's very hard because we're all human beings here, but I think you should say what you see. And I think that's one of the main differentiators between a person, for example, like Charles Barkley and everybody else. Charles Barkley's not afraid of turning off athletes. I think his main thing is, I'm going to say what I believe, and that's it. And let the chips fall where they may. So I think it's a nuanced conversation. I do understand where Brandon Marshall is coming from. However, I think is a much more robust a conversation, and the various ways to look at it. And that's just not the only angle. Now, this is just my opinion. So what I want to know from you guys, number one, what do you think about the points you try to make? Number two, what do you think about our analysis? Whatever you guys think, please leave your thoughts in the comment section. We catch you on the next show. Peace.